Hi guys, in this video we're going to look into stepped preview. So step preview is going to help you with your pose to pose animation, and um, it will help you create your sort of base animation and it help you refine it. So I have this my bouncy ball here, and I'm going to start creating my base poses. So I'm going to set these poses here. I'm going to move forwards in time. I'm then going to maybe make my peak up here, and then going to bring it down. So at the moment, I'm just sort of slapping keyframes down. I'm not being too particular with them. I might maybe go into my animation editor and my graph editor and start having a look at some of these keyframes to getting them a bit more uniform. So I've got this sort of slight oddly odd transition here. I'm going to click this and I'm going to click this button up here that's going to sort of smooth that out for me. So I want my Z to be fairly consistent, so it's sort of traveling forwards. It's maybe slowly losing a bit of momentum over time, so it's maybe getting ever so slightly less each time. So just selecting these parts of the keyframes, moving down there. Look at my up and down, so it's at the same height. I'm just going to move that down a little bit here. So I'm getting my sort of my base animation there. So let's just minimize that. Okay, so now Maya is automatically transitioning between these. Now I want my ball to kind of squash and stretch as it hits the ground. The issue you're going to have is that it's constantly moving, so it actually needs to stay on the ground a little bit here before it moves up. So if I want to do my if I do my squash down here now on this frame, it's then going to kind of squish between the first frame, so it's going to start squishing before it hits the floor, which is not what I want. I want it to hit that floor, squish into that floor, and then spring out of that. So if I right click on my timeline, I can enable stepped preview. And what this looks like is it just shows me my keyframes. So I can play this through, I can get a feel for the timing. It's a bit more like traditional animation, as if you were working with kind of keyframes. You would create all those key poses first, then we would fill in the in-betweens, except Maya's going to add those in-betweens for us. So now what I could do is I could maybe copy this keyframe. I can use this keyframe here where it hits the ground. I could now move forwards in time, and you'll notice it's not moving at all. So I could maybe now set this keyframe here where it squishes down. So it's now squishing down there. I haven't got that awkward kind of transitioning up. It stays on the ground for me until the next one. Okay, I'm now going to just move those keyframes forward 3 frames because that's the distance between these keyframes here. So it squishes down, move forwards again. It's then going to squish out of that. Super. So it's going to come down into that ground there. Maybe it does lag behind sort of a little bit that way. Let's set a keyframe there. So we've now got this sort of bounce there. It's going to squish into, I think I maybe want it that way. So I'm now getting, yep, cool. I've now got a really nice motion there of that squishing, and then it's going to leave the ground and it's going to move up to this one here. Okay, so I'm now getting a very kind of diagonal kind of transition between these. So I could now maybe make this a little bit more arced. So let's move forwards in time. Let's grab our thing here and then move it here, and the same before that as well. I'm actually going to copy this keyframe, move it before, paste that in there, and so it's not like that at all. Okay, so there must be some issue with copying keyframes on this rig. I could maybe turn the character set off, copy this keyframe, paste. Cool. Now just turn that character set back on again. Let's set these back to 0. Cool. Set a keyframe there. Cool. Now I can move this to the other side of that arc. So now I'm building up the animation. It's getting a little bit more detailed. So this is where true pose to pose comes in. So I can now take this one, move it a bit forwards here. So I'm getting that ease in. So I'm building up the animation. I'm not letting Maya do the work for me. I am doing the work. I am creating the animation here. Okay, you're getting a feel for that time. There's a little bit of an error there. So let's have a look at our animation editor as our graph editor again. Let's have a look at the Z first of all. And I'm looking around this area here. Okay, so it's pretty much in line with that. It goes kind of forwards and then backwards. So I could maybe I'm just going to delete those keyframes and let it have a more even sort of transition there. So now over these frames here. Okay, it doesn't like that. I'm not going to do that. I am actually going to tweak them manually. So I'm going to move them into more of a eased workflow there and just take that handle in so it eases it in there a little bit more. Super. So now I've got more of that really nice arc in there. I can have a look at my Y and I can go in here and tweak this. Okay, maybe I want it a little bit higher there. I can see that those keyframes aren't quite symmetrical. Let's just move it forwards along one frame. So now it should be more similar there. I can take this handle and make that hit in a bit harder there. Do the same thing here. It kind of slows down ever so slightly. So if we just take that in there, we can break. If I click here, I can break the tangents. So I can edit one handle without the other one. So it's easing in like that. So I'm starting to build this sort of smooth animation up using this stepped preview. So animators will animate in passes where they will first start always in stepped and create all of these key poses a little bit easier. If I now turn stepped preview off, I can then view my animation properly there. So it goes up, okay. It doesn't quite travel as far forward as I would like there. Let's go into our graph editor and it's our Z we want. And let's just increase all of that so it travels further. And have a look at what this gives us. Okay, cool. Super. So I would follow this process through. I would use that stepped preview to create all of my key poses. It looks a lot more like a traditional animation the more you are kind of adding extra kind of keyframes in at key points. So we don't need to add them in everywhere. So I added them at key points around the arc here to create more of a slow in, slow out along the top. Okay, I might then play around with my timing, get my timing a little bit more accurate. So it's starting to feel more kind of realistic there. I would keep building this up, keep working on it until I had a really smooth animation that you'll see in my slides. Okay, so this video is between talking about stepped preview. Please use stepped preview when you start your animations. It will make your life a lot easier. It makes you more of a manual animator. Maya's doing less of the work for you, but Maya's then doing the useful work. Like it's creating these kind of boring in between keyframes here, and then you're just creating the kind of the eases in your animation. Okay, thank you very much.